All right, so I'm just going to pick up on the slides, our last class on assessment. I did finish a couple of the last ones, and then I'll flip over to this week's slide. So I think we just left off here. We were talking about assessment considerations. I may have talked about some of these last time. I think we talked about alertness and attention span. Symbolic representational skills. So just to reiterate that, you have to assess if the child is ready to represent vocabulary in picture form, okay, if you're going to be using aided AAC systems. So cognitively, they have to be ready to be able to understand picture representation of vocabulary in some way. So it could be photographs, which are very easy and concrete, but still that's a developmental skill that even young, normally developing children, babies and toddlers have to learn that too. Okay, so that still needs to be assessed as part of your skill set that you're considering when you're looking at AAC. We talked about object and pictorial permanence, because I think I was talking about one of my cases where the boy I was evaluating, he always had to see the objects in sight. Okay, so it wasn't really clear to me that he really understood object permanence, okay, when he was requesting, and because given the time constraints of my evaluation, you know, it's not something I can necessarily assess on the spot. Sort of has to be assessed over time, okay, in the moment, when you're providing the choices through photos, okay, when the objects aren't in sight, okay, and then seeing if the child can make some of those choices, and then make a choice. And then obviously then you can show the objects later, okay, show the objects when the child's ready to have those items, and then see if those choices match. Okay, so that's one way to try and assess that. Overall, when you're looking at AAC for expressive communication, okay, the very basic skill is making choices. Okay, so sometimes we work with kids who are more severely involved and more significantly delayed, and you know, families and educational personnel are desperate looking for some way for the child to communicate. Okay? But it might be that receptively and also developmentally that they still have progress to be made in those areas, okay, before we start working on expressive communication, and that might be the situation. In that a child has to have preferences, okay, they have to have items and things they care about, okay, they have to be able to engage with items and at least at some level be able to engage with another person, okay, to be able to communicate something. You see where I'm going with this? So again, if you're working with children who are more severely disabled and impaired cognitively as well, those you may have to be working on those foundation skills first before then we introduce choice making or introduce AAC methods. Okay, and that's something important to know. I again do a lot of consultations, and I think some of the clinicians I work with, they kind of forget that piece, because again they're so desperate for the person that they're working with for them to communicate, okay? But they have to realize you have to build those foundational skills just like a normally developing baby, okay, and toddler is going through language acquisition for that whole first year, okay? Obviously they're not talking, okay, because they're working on their receptive language skills, they're working on their cognitive skills, okay, in order to then prep them, okay, for that then after the 12-month mark to then start using some words expressively, okay? So if you're working with someone who's very severely impaired or delayed, you may be working on some of those skills similar to what a child, normally developing child, works on that first year, okay? So, okay, so we talked about signaling, I think, and the importance of understanding if individuals or a child's making selections on an AAC system. How do you know that that's what they truly are wanting to select or communicate, okay? So do you remember, did we talk about this as far as some of those signals that kids or individuals would make after they maybe make a selection on an AAC system to kind of let you know that it's intentional and true?
The gestures or like facial expressions.
Right. So, so be a little more specific. What would they do with their gestures?
So like their eyes were rising, or mouth was opening, or
eye gazing.
Yeah.
Gazing towards what?
The item.
The item, or what else?
Picture. Or
Even if there's like
with an AAC device, it's an eye gaze thing when they're showing you intention.
If they're making a selection, how do you know that's not random or a mistake, or?
Well, if you're trying to take it away, if they get upset, or.
Yeah, but, yeah, but then we don't want to try. We want to try it.
And give them a choice too. You can give them a choice: field 3, field 2.
Right. Okay. So they make a choice, but then how do you know it's not a mistake?
You can switch the, like if let's say it's pictures,
Mm-hmm.
say it's text or something. You can switch the image symbol. One time it's on the left, the next time it's on the right. Ask your WH question, or what is.
All right, but okay, so it's cookie. So they select cookie. How do you know that even if you switched it around, that they truly want to ask for a cookie?
What is? Well, first, there's many ways. There's the gestural. If they're going for it, they can move their hand.
All right, so they're reaching towards the real object that they see in context or within sight?
Yeah.
So they're reaching towards the cookie then?
So a field of 3.
Okay.
Cookie, apple.
So they're eye gazing or gesturing towards the actual item that you have available. That's one way.
Eye gazing or gesturing.
Okay.
With your hand.
You had another idea?
I was gonna see if you did like yes, no kind of thing. Did you do that?
Yeah, so kind of. So the other thing I was kind of getting at was other types of gestures or eye gazing, okay, towards your communication partner.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's what I mean, like, if that's what they really wanted, then, then follow up with like a yes, no, like, kind of, and see if they gesture or respond to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm. Exactly.
Wait.
Yeah.
It doesn't correlate to the field of but if you
Took away the item, you're saying?
took away that and they protested that and showed protest,
Right.
they wanted it back, they would show you. I guess the same way, again, by protesting through your eyes, through gestural, through,
Okay. Yeah, but then they're getting upset that you took away an item, okay? But then the key is then you want to see it, okay, can they then use their AAC device or system to then ask for that same item again, you see? So they might, what I'm saying is some kids who have difficulty with symbolic representation and being able to understand representations of pictures, okay, that actually match the items that they want, okay. Sometimes, regardless of what they have, you take it away, they get upset. Do you see where I'm going with this?
okay, so it doesn't matter if they know it or not, if they just, it's an object, you took it away, hey, what happened?
Right, or they get
Okay,
upset, okay, so I'm trying to filter out
So
what
that's
you're
still not
thinking
showing
is.
intention of the actual object, okay.
The gesture towards the actual same item they selected on the AAC system, yes, it's called the correspondence check, and that's a definite way that you can tell that they, the selection they made on their system is matching, okay, they're going for the exact same item, okay, so, and then we talked about kind of confirming, this stupid thing, confirming through some type of yes, no signal. So that's, yeah, so if they select cookie, again, the example, okay, then I can say, oh, Johnny, you want a cookie? And if you get a head nod or some kind of affirmation from the person, or a smile and eye contact, then you can kind of take that as a signal. Yeah, that's really what I want. And it's good, you want to hear something, because then they're also responding to the receptive language that, you're giving that person by asking them, do you want a cookie, that yes, no kind of question. So that's another way, to assess if they're understanding receptively questions that are being presented to them, in yes, no formats. I wouldn't make them say yes or no in their AAC system, but I want them to at least do a head nod or some kind of acknowledgement, to be able to answer some yes, no questions or confirm their choice, because a lot of people are going to end up doing that for a while, other people, other communication partners. So you have another idea?
I was just going to say, if you phrase it as a yes, no, and then you do the next question, and say so for yes, do you want a cookie, and they didn't say yes or no, does that give you that gives a lot of, does that give you information that they don't understand, or they didn't even gesture for the cookie in the first place too? Is that yes, no, another good indicator for that understanding?
Yeah, so that would then result in some question marks to you as the clinician to say, is this intentional? Or also looking at the person's unaided, methods of communication, like gestures and facial expressions. If that's impaired, they're really not good at responding to others with those kinds of communication signals. So that's another thing. Again, children with autism, since we're kind of going into that next topic, have difficulties with that, and they difficulties with eye contact, So that's why we do the correspondence checks with the real object. Okay? So if I have the choice orange, then, that was a, choice on their AAC system, and they, selected orange, and then I want to have this. I say, okay, go for it, go get it. Right, and then they would reach towards it. Hopefully, they reach towards my cheese stick, then I know that they're having difficulty with symbol association skills. So they're not getting it. Okay, that they actually maybe wanted my cheese stick, and they selected orange on my, So so we have some work to do. Okay, on working on symbol correspondence. Yeah.
Because I have a kid right now who has autism, and I guess that's now what I have to do is bring in the actual symbols. He says yes to everything.
Right.
So
Is he a polio?
yes, he's echolalic. I even asked, I was like, is your name the speech therapist? We were sitting there, and I was like, I feel like he doesn't even know. He responds yes to even I was like, is your name Bob? And just asking to see if he's gonna say yes, and he did. So he says yes, and that's not his name.
Right.
So he says yes to everything. So, and I'm having difficulty seeing what he actually can do with any information at all.
Right. So he has obviously significant receptive language impairment.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously processing questions that are abstract or not in the here and now, like is your name Bob? It's abstract, So my guess is that's going to be difficult for him to even understand or process, versus if you had an in-context activity, you asked him a question about.
That's what I did, but
I don't know how we did with that.
Everything was yes.
Still.
He did horribly.
Okay.
And everything is yes. Everything.
So if you did a Lego activity or blocks, and you asked him a question about, depending if he knows a difference between a tower and a house or something like that, I don't even know. Those, again, receptively, he may not understand those words.
Yeah.
Should we make it big or small? I would get away from the yes, no, or you can say, should we make it big? That would be a yes, no then. Do you see, so does he know concepts, big and small? So whatever question you pose, it's then you have to think about, okay, does he know these words that I'm asking him, and does he understand the vocabulary, that I'm asking him, and he may or may not. And that may be the issue, A lot of kids with, again, autism have significant receptive language impairments. So again, using real objects in context, so then I would show him, a big and then small, and show him visually. Now ask him, which one do you want to make? And maybe at that point he can point and tell you, or maybe use his words, big or small. Yeah, so yes, no questions are easy for us to process, because it kind of takes a second for us to process that language, and then it only takes just a yes or no for us as normally developing people to answer. So we assume then they're easy for kids with disabilities, and they're actually very challenging. So there's a lot of receptive language that you need to process. So I sometimes get away from the yes, no questions for kids, again, like with significant autism and more deficits with receptive language, and I kind of go to more choices. Like I said, do you want to do a big one or a small one? And I might have then the visual difference, giving him choices for him to tell you what he wants and kind of direct something. Do you want cheese stick or orange? And then kind of use your real objects as cues as you're saying the words. So that might help, to see some more skill from him. Yeah. So yeah.
Just to give a suggestion, I also have a case right now who the child is on the spectrum. What helps with the PEX board that he uses, we'll have like Play-Doh and bubbles, and so you have to find something that he really likes.
Right.
And what we'll do is we have like the I want symbols, and then he'll point, he'll say I want, and then bubbles or Play-Doh, whichever choice he picks on his own using PEX board, and I'll pick them up with items, not just the picture, but I'll have the actual bubbles and the Play-Doh in my hand.
The real items, right?
And then he'll go for that item that he picks, so that kind of helps him.
Right, so you're doing that, again, it's called a simple correspondence check. So she's checking to make sure he's actually going for the real item that he's selecting.
And he's good with that now, because he can also then save each item, so he'll say, I want Play-Doh.
Okay, good, he's approximating, good.
But what we're doing now is working on yes, no with him, and what we've decided to do is for him to say no, we found something that he doesn't like. He does not like cars.
Okay.
So once we bring the car out, we say, do you want car? And he hates touching the car to push it, and he won't do anything. He'll just pull his hand away. So we'll say no,
Okay, so
and then he'll
so she's teaching no,
Yeah.
and how to use no as a rejection.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's helping to find something that they like and don't like, especially don't like. It was hard for us in the beginning because we didn't know what he didn't like, but that's helping us with no now. He can do it spontaneously sometimes.
Okay. So some ideas now, maybe teach the difference and try to get him to start using no in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely helps to have little items.
But it still may not resolve your issue though with him saying yes for all questions that are abstract that he doesn't know. Yeah.
So that would be just working strictly on receptive skills then, in his case. If he's saying yes to everything.
Well, I would back up, like I said, and kind of, work on tagging language with real items and real objects and any kind of visual representation and tagging the words there, okay, and kind of teaching the words, okay, kind of from the ground up, with him. I would get away from asking other kinds of abstract or out of context questions to him, because he's not going to be able to understand.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if that's just what he can, because we had the activity and I was trying to collect, and I was he's getting all this wrong. We made it even easier and just had pointing to okay, horsey, cow, point to horsey, and even that.
Oh wow, even that.
Yeah, he's
how old is he?
He needs to go to District 75 school.
No, he's not in District 75 yet.
No, my school is Jen, and they don't want to put more kids in District 75, so they're reading in grade 6. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah. So again, if you're a horsey, cow, I guess you have a picture of them. Yeah. If he hasn't had that life experience, he has diagnosed for autism of animals.
And even the house and school, pictures of real things, he's still
And if they're not a picture of his house, and his school.
So that's what you mean, like directly.
Directly matching, yeah, so that might be also because he hasn't generalized the words of house and school to other things that kind of look like a house and a school. What are the features of a house and a school? Do you see? You have to kind of know that in order to identify that in pictures that you don't know the house or the school.
Okay.
So kids with autism, again, you have to use photos of their real things, including their kitchen, their house, their school. And then you can work on teaching then, introducing other pictures of other schools or houses, but then you're working on then feature analysis and kind of, if they're ready for that, introducing other pictures of house and school. But that's where you start with their familiar world. Yeah. Yeah.
Animals, because most of my kids are read, they can, you say, they can identify. So it depends.
All right, so we kind of talked anyway about receptive language kind of just now in our conversation, and how important it is, for you to understand where that person's functioning receptively before you're going to expect some kind of expressive output with an AAC system, right? So here, functional single word vocabulary. What single words do they know? And again, you're trying to figure that out with your client, so you really, we need to really, and the bottom line with AAC, when you're doing an assessment, you really need to know the language capability of the person you're working with. Okay,
That's
so
what I'm trying to figure out.
right, and it may, especially, as, newer clinicians, you guys are going through these processes, it takes a little longer, than someone who maybe has a lot of experience who come in, and kind of do some diagnostic assessment tasks, but especially, kids with autism and with a challenging, disorders, it does take some time to get to know the client and really what they're capable of. And yeah, so you really need to have a good handle on your client's language skills before we're going to now consider an AAC system, okay? And how I do AAC assessments, again, I follow a consultative model. So I'm doing the AAC assessment with the treating SLP, who again, hopefully has worked with the student for at least, the school year or some time. They know the student then. They know their language capabilities. I've requested all background information, current IEPs, any previous diagnostic evaluations that have been done. So I do all my investigative homework so I can have a better understanding of where that kid is at as far as their language skills. So I'm kind of using all of those resources to then inform myself then on the client that I'm going out to do the consultation for. But you have to do it that way. And if you try to do an AAC assessment on a kid cold, okay, you can imagine, that you'd be floundering, okay? And you would be dedicating all of your time really on doing a language assessment because you really need to know where they're functioning. So,
it takes time.
yes. So, but what I'm speaking is, with you guys, you'll be implementing and using AAC again with the clients that you'll get to know and have some period of time to then do your baselining and assessment tasks to get to know their capabilities before then you consider AAC, or start trying some things, okay? I would question any kind of AAC assessment, that is done, that, someone kind of comes in cold and doesn't know the student or the client and tries to then recommend, some type of AAC technique or system, without doing a lot of homework, on getting to know the clients. So again, it's important and it's a process is what I'm trying to say too, in determining the language capabilities, and then again, you're doing trials, okay, with the AAC systems that you think would be appropriate, again, based upon the language and cognitive skills, of your clients. And we kind of, to back up, we talked about predictive assessment, okay, and feature matching. Does that ring a bell? Now, it's been a couple weeks, but, again, based upon the receptive language abilities, okay, and here the preliminary cognitive abilities, okay. Now, again, I'm going to now predict, okay, what type of AAC systems, techniques would be appropriate, again, for my client. Okay? And then I would try them over trials and presentations to then collect data and see what the performance is. All right, other considerations. So verbal intelligibility. Some comments here in that I also get a lot of requests to do evals for kids who have speech intelligibility issues. Okay, so they have speech motor impairments. They may have CP and have dysarthria, for instance, or they have chalcopraxia. Okay, so some of those kinds of diagnoses. So they are verbal communicators. Okay, so they're speaking and using speech, but their intelligibility varies. Okay? And what usually happens is that the very familiar people and people who are frequently around that person, like parents, family members, classroom teacher, okay, they end up typically understanding the individual because they end up learning their patterns, you know, of their speech patterns, okay, and what often happens is that then other adults within that child's life, okay, become very concerned because they're afraid that then that child won't be understood by unfamiliar communication partners. Or what if this child, you know, is out in the community or goes somewhere where no one understands them, or in a situation where they're not around those familiar people. Okay, so the challenge is, as you know, when I've demonstrated the AAC apps, okay, you got some familiarity of how they work, okay, there is a big learning curve, okay, to be able to learn the vocabulary in AAC system, to be able to find your words, okay. We tried out the different apps, Touch Chat with Word Power, we tried Proloquo to Go, that one night we tried all the different messages and saw how much navigating Proloquo to Go was versus, you know, Word Power and those kinds of differences. But no matter what, there is a steep learning curve, okay, to be able to learn where all these words are and then be able to then remember them quick enough to find them to be able to put your messages together, okay, without people sitting and waiting for long periods of time before your message comes out. So in order for a person to learn the system and learn where the words are, they have to be using the system a lot, okay? So a lot of use and practice. Okay? So for kids who are verbal, who once in a while or at times are not intelligible, or again the fear that, okay, they go out somewhere or they encounter someone who doesn't know them, they're not going to understand them, those situations are not as frequent, right? They're once in a while. So, are they going to be using the AAC system very much? No. So, how are they going to learn where all those words are in Proloquo to Go or Word Power? Are they going to learn where they are? Not really, or not well, no. And if it's once or twice a week that you see them in therapy, yeah. So this is the challenge, and these are things you need to be aware of to then be able to explain this to other educational, you know, colleagues that you will have and parents, okay, who will come to you with these kinds of concerns. If the child can spell, what do you think then that would change, a game changer? They can spell.
They can resort to spelling.
Right, so how would spelling help versus using a pre-stored vocabulary they'd have to learn where everything is?
It's quicker to get the message across.
It's quicker because,
You're
why?
not looking for anything.
Yeah.
You can just type it out.
Okay.
Opposed to like scanning.
Right, so you can say anything and everything you want to say, okay, using the alphabet. So there's no need, right, to go searching through vocabularies and words to find your message. Okay, so if a child can spell, then that may help, okay, in those rarer instances where they're not understood. But a lot of times these kids have literacy difficulties and they haven't acquired good spelling skills. So, you know, that may or may not be an option, you know, for that kind of child. So, high-tech AAC for those kinds of individuals may or may not be helpful, okay, in those situations. And unless a child is severely unintelligible and really is not understood still by familiar partners, and they really need to rely on the AAC system more as a primary mode than a backup or once in a while, then yes, okay, so the more they're going to use it and more rely on it, then that would lend itself to being a more successful tool, okay, for that person. So, all right, so just a couple things here. Medical, if the condition's progressive, that's something you want to know, okay? It's more rare, but in my years of working, you know, I have evaluated some kids who have had diagnosed with cancer or brain tumors and things like that. So it's something to know, okay, so if they're going to progressively lose some function, okay, you want maybe a system that then can go more simple if they need it, you know, and have some flexibility, and also maybe offer some options with physical access to the system if they're going to lose some motor functioning and those kinds of considerations. So it's something, that's why you need to think about that. It's more rare, in children, you know, progressive conditions, but there's still, you know, conditions like muscular dystrophy, you know, that children, you know, have that are progressive, though that typically they do retain their verbal skills, you know, through much of the illness. More for adults, you know, with those, and we'll do the adult topic, you know, towards the end of the semester, but obviously, you know, you want, if any condition is going to change, then you want the AAC system to change with it, is what I'm saying. All right, so that's kind of where I want to stop there with assessment. Right, so